Kinsey Schofield here. Welcome to Crown and Conflict, a series dedicated to dissecting the most riveting royal scandals in history. With insight from world-renowned royal experts, we explore the stories that shook the monarchy and captivated the globe. This week, I'm excited to welcome historian and royal expert Rafe Heydel-Mankoo. Rafe. Rafe. I feel like we talk about this topic a lot, even though we're just starting to collaborate more often with each other. This is a topic that we're having to discuss quite often. Some new developments. Prince Harry's being given a new threat assessment by the UK Home Office, the first such formal risk evaluation since he stepped down from royal duties in 2020. The new threat assessment is reportedly due to be completed next month, so it's not like we're going to have to wait very long. And together, we are going to break down what this new assessment means, because I'm seeing a lot of whispers online. Harry and Meghan could return to the UK. I mean, I clutch my pearls. I would clutch them if I had them. But I'd also like to discuss royal security scares from the past, breaches that challenge the monarchy's sense of security. It is the timing of this assessment puzzling for you? The government won the court case and had maintained it was providing appropriate protection on a case-by-case basis when Prince Harry visited. He had his pity party on the BBC, and I thought that this was case closed for a little while.
Yes, well, two things here. One is we have had a change of government. We were under the Conservative government for most of of the issue that Prince Harry was raising in the courts. The first prince ever to take his father's government to court, it should be said and noted. Um, but the new Home Office Minister, Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, Prince Harry wrote to her, and she has decided, obviously, that the Home Office should revisit this. The Home Office is legally responsible for decisions made by the independent committee, RAVEC, which we're going to be talking about, which is independent of government, but which makes these decisions. And I don't think it's necessarily because of any renewed security threat. What it is Prince Harry was essentially saying to RAVEC, you're not abiding by your own rules. You're supposed to have, as a member of the royal family, an annual review of
Mm.
your security threat. And he hasn't received one since around 2019, 2020. So he was simply saying all members of the royal family should have a risk management board meeting to determine every year whether the threat has gone up or down. He says his hasn't gone up or down. There have been various security people in this country, including former members of RAVEC and the Metropolitan Police, such as Neil Basu, who said they don't think his threat level has decreased since 2019, 2020. If anything, because of all the stuff he's been up to since then, his risk level may have actually increased. You know, his memoirs and details he gave about people he killed in active duty in Afghanistan, all this sort of thing may have increased the level. That's why they're having this review. Now, the review may decide to keep things just as they are. At the moment, Prince Harry needs to provide 30 days written notice prior to any visit to the UK so that his trip can be assessed on a case-by-case basis. And there's no reason to think that won't stay the same. But of course, if the review decides that he is at great risk, then that could change.
So I guess my question is, when they do these case by case studies, which is sometimes multiple times a year, when he goes out to, whether it's well child or a court case, because he continues to sue everybody, uh, do they not do the full due diligence that this big, it sounds like this is just a bigger breakdown of security threats? Is it a mini investigation into what he might need for this brief trip? And we're talking about hours and hours and pages of a report of online comments or legitimate threats that have come through whatever secret way that they've discovered them. What's the difference between the case by case review and this big review?
Well, you've essentially said it there. On a case-by-case basis means they look at the particular nature of a specific visit in this case and determine what the security requirements are. Whereas if you have something like a proper RAVEC means that the Royal and VIP Executive Committee, which is this Home Office committee led by an independent chair. But when they do their annual sort of risk management board committee review, they get evidence from the royal family, they get evidence from government, they get evidence from the police, and in Prince Harry's case, they'll get evidence from Prince Harry as well. And that's a much more detailed review that takes place. And in fact, one of the arguments for granting Prince Harry his former level of security is that actually sources have said it's cheaper to just give him some armed police when on the rare occasions he comes than have to go through this process every time he wants to visit the UK. And those have only been some sources I've heard. I haven't had that officially said, but if there is an actual cost saving to be made there, it may make more sense. Interesting also to note, actually, that the public, we've just had polling out 2 days ago by YouGov, which is a very respected polling agency, showing that a majority of British people actually do think Prince Harry should receive police armed protection.
Oh.
56%, but they're split as to who should pay for it. So of that 56% who do want him to get police protection, only 17%, or one third of them, think that the state should pay for it, the taxpayer should pay for it. Two-thirds think that Prince Harry should pay for it. And then you have around 20 odd percent who think he shouldn't get any police protection at all. Now, the official position of the Metropolitan Police and the British government has been that you can't have private individuals paying for police protection because it sets a dangerous precedent. You could have all sorts of foreign VIPs coming over here and just expecting the police force to be like any private bodyguard company for hire. That's not how things work here.
Well, you said this yourself. Does Harry put himself in jeopardy is my question. And does that even matter when it comes to this report? Because you know how bad political violence has become in the United States of America. And there's Harry making Trump jokes on national television. You talked about him admitting to the 25 deaths of the Taliban. Sometimes I wonder if he's putting himself in jeopardy by not, you know, thinking about the consequences of his actions. And does it
Yes,
matter?
yeah, the old expression is from the frying pan into the fire. London alone is a much safer place than California is. Certainly Los Angeles is much more dangerous than London. But of course, just look at America's political history. Look at the number of assassinations that have taken place, both successfully and unsuccessfully. Just in recent months, of course, you've had Charlie Kirk, you've had the attempt on Trump on multiple occasions. And of course, you've tragically also had also Ronald Reagan as well, but then tragically John F. Kennedy as well, and Robert RFK and Martin Luther King and so forth. You don't have that in this country. We've only had one prime minister ever assassinated, and that was in the early 19th century, Spencer Perceval. So, in many respects, because of gun ownership, Britain is a much safer country, much less violent country, moreover. America would seem to be a lot higher on that. But yes, he hasn't made things good for himself. He has essentially raised his security level. As you say in his book Spare, he admitted to killing 25 members of the Taliban, but he said he didn't think of them as being people. He said if you don't think of them as being people, they are just chess pieces on the chessboard, easy to remove. And he received huge criticism for that by senior members of the military, admirals and generals and colonels, who said that essentially he was not only making himself a security target, he had betrayed the military. In fact, one colonel said, he's betrayed the royal family, now he's betrayed his other family, the military family, because he's increased the security risk to all of the British Armed Forces by speaking so cavalierly like that. And in fact, shortly after these comments were made, you then had members of the Taliban tweeting out saying that our people aren't chess pieces, and essentially saying, you will get your comeuppance, be it in a court of law or wherever. And we had a British cabinet minister on the defense minister saying that Harry's words would be fed into jihadi propaganda to carry out attacks against the UK. I would also say, speaking so unwisely and candidly, you never speak about, there's a rule in the military, you never speak about your kills because it's seen as being a security issue. Also, of course, increases the risk for his own family. So it's not just him is in jeopardy, I would say it's his entire family who are at jeopardy. And of course, already is a very high risk candidate, and he hasn't made things any easier.
You mentioned what the reaction was on the YouGov poll to people having to potentially pay. With all of the questions surrounding royal finances right now, whether it's Dimbleby's new BBC program or uh, Prince Andrew's rent, I'm seeing so much talk about how much the royal family costs and what value do they bring. I do think that taxpayers would be resentful about having to pay for Prince Harry's protection if they do change his threat level. But I are you also going to see people angry if Meghan decides to go over there just to shop or to accept another award? I think it's one thing if Harry goes over or to sue another newspaper. I think it's one thing if Harry's over there working for Wellchild or another valuable cause, but so much of what Harry and Meghan do is self-serving.
It should be noted when I say that a majority of British people in the last poll think he should get police protection, uh, it's not those who want the taxpayer to pay. Out of
Mm.
the British population, only 17%, only 1/7 think the taxpayer should pay. So the overwhelming British public do not believe that they should be paying for Prince Harry's security. We know that they've got a lot of money from all these Netflix deals and everything else anyway.
And Hilton
Uh,
Hilton Toronto conference talks, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So there's no shortage of money on that front. But yes, I mean the big question is, of course, if let's imagine a scenario now where he does get granted this new protection, going back to the traditional way he was protected. The idea is that this would, of course, open up the possibility of his children and his wife coming over. Now, that's going to be a very telling moment because whilst the official line from the Sussexes is that it's not safe for them to come over here. Of course, Meghan has gone elsewhere in Europe as well,
Yeah.
facing a similar situation. Is it really the fact that Meghan won't come over here because she's frightened of being booed and heckled? And if she does get security, then she will have no other reason for avoiding coming over here than simply not wanting to face the British public in a walkabout scenario. So that's going to be an interesting situation. But yes, to your bigger point, I don't think there's ever been a time, actually, certainly in my lifetime, where the royal finances have become such a contentious issue and have been the focus of so much intense security, not only from organizations like Republic, which is the lobby group to get rid of the monarchy, but as you say, even the BBC, which was the most sort of trusted brand for royal coverage, and the person that was entrusted with providing a lot of that royal coverage, they've been raising questions about all of this. And we know that the King and the Prince of Wales are particularly sensitive about these issues. Uh, that's one of the reasons, of course, that Andrew Mountbatten Windsor was taken to Sandringham, because Sandringham was a private palace owned by the royal family themselves, taking it essentially completely out of the arena of taxpayer funding. So it's a question as to whether the royal family will be very happy to see Harry receiving taxpayer-funded security.
This holiday, while others are chasing the rush, find your sense of calm with Peak. Peak is a luxury wellness brand powered by rare plants and cutting edge ingredients, offering the perfect remedy for the season's hustle and bustle. Their science backed botanicals, minerals, and vitamins support metabolic function, immune health, sustained energy, and radiant skin. In this festive season, choose serenity as the ultimate luxury with Peak. One of their newest essentials, the Deep Hydration Protocol, is a day to night electrolyte system that keeps your body and skin hydrated while promoting better sleep. Enjoy a focus boost without the jitters or crash. The natural balance of caffeine and calming compounds keep you centered and alert all day long. Nutrients in their matcha help curb sugar and hunger cravings, making it easier to stick to your wellness goals. I've been using the Deep Hydration Protocol every night for the past 2 months, and my skin has never looked so plump and dewy. I wake up looking and feeling like I got plenty of sleep. Ready to gift the glow? Unlock 20% off for life for yourself and everyone on your list. Give the gift of glowing health this holiday season. Get started at peaklifecom/Kinsey. That's PIQUE life.com/Kinsey. All right, shots fired during Trooping the Color, a kidnap plot, and the stranger who sat on the Queen's bed. We are unpacking the royal security failures that could have changed changed history. Rafe, I'd never heard of this one. During a visit to New Zealand, a 17-year-old named Christopher Lewis fired a shot at the Queen while she was exiting her motorcade. Is it true that officials tried to downplay this as a fallen sign, just a loud noise in 1981?
Yes, well, they did much more than just trying to play it down. The New Zealand police actually covered it up. There was an official cover-up, and we didn't get notice of this until years later when police files were declassified. And this was because, of course, royal visits to New Zealand are so rare, and they do bring such great positive coverage to the country. It's one of the few times the world ever gets to hear or see about New Zealand is through a royal visit. That's one of the great benefits to so many countries around the world having a monarchy. They didn't want to risk the royal family not returning or criticism from the British media about this. And this was a young teenager, 17-year-old, who tried to assassinate the Queen. He was on the fifth floor of a building which her motorcade was passing underneath. He had a rifle, tried to shoot, didn't have good vantage point. Also, his gun wasn't good enough to travel that sort of a range. And the police basically said it was the sound of a firecracker or of a sign falling down. And he essentially wanted to become somebody who wanted to become famous in many respects. And he ended up going into a psychiatric ward where he planned to murder Prince Charles, as he then was as well, and also the Queen on a future visit to New Zealand. So many of these sorts of things happens. Should be said, fixated persons are one of the biggest security threats to the royal family. Fixated people are people with a mental health issue where they believe they have some personal relationship with the monarch or member of the royal family, and they become extremely obsessed with them. And so great is this threat that it's actually regarded as a greater threat even than traditional terrorism, that the police force here have a unique unit set up to focus on these fixated individuals, and there are no fewer than 500 of such people detected within the last 3 years, 35 of whom are said to pose a great threat to the monarchy, and three of them who were arrested and imprisoned have since been released and continue to be monitored.
Oh, wow. That's very scary. What about the guy that says he is Queen Camilla and King Charles's child? Do you think that he's on that list?
Oh yeah, I'd be pretty certain he must be on that list as well.
That's wild. That's very interesting information that I had not found during my research. So thank you so much for sharing that with me. We talked about this briefly, I think the last time I saw you in person during the Queen's birthday parade. A teenager fired six blank rounds at her as she rode her favorite horse. The Queen famously calmed the horse and continued the procession. This was a major security failure again in 1981. What's with the 1981 and poor Queen Elizabeth?
Yeah, 1981, and both were 17-year-old boys. I mean, this is quite remarkable that the similarities here. This was a chap called Marcus Sargent. He fired six blank shots from a replica pistol at Queen Elizabeth as she rode. In those days, she still rode on horseback, and she was riding Burmese, her favorite horse from the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, down the Mall. And everyone noted about, of course, again, as you said, how the Queen was remarkably composed and managed to calm her horse and continued the parade. And of course, again, it turned out that this person wanted to be famous and had expressed a desire to become the most famous teenager in the world by assassinating VIPs. He'd even sent a letter to Buckingham Palace beforehand, but it didn't actually get received until after the event. He was arrested under the Treason Act because if he tried to, of course, cause alarm or distress or try to attack the monarch, that is in this country regarded as treason. He pled guilty. He got only a 5-year sentence, it has to be said, and he served 3 years before being released. But yes, it was one of those great moments where you actually saw the Queen under pressure, and she performed brilliantly. And it did lead to a big review of royal security, as of course happened a year later in 1982, which I hope is your next question.
Do you ever read the label on a typical bag of chips? It's often a science experiment with seed oils, MSG, artificial dyes, and mystery ingredients. Masa is part of a growing movement to bring back real food. Masa's chips contain just three ingredients: organic corn, sea salt, and 100% grass fed beef tallow. Not only do these chips avoid the bad stuff, they are crunchy and taste incredible too. Snacking on masa chips is nothing like eating regular chips. With masa, you feel satisfied, light, and energetic. No crash, bloat, or gross, sluggish feeling afterwards. You won't find yourself binging or feeling hungry. Personally, my favorite flavor of masa is the original. It's a clean and crisp taste. If you love masa, then you'll absolutely adore Vandy Crisps. Vandy, Masa's sister company, makes the most delicious 3 ingredient potato chips I've ever had. My favorite is the smokehouse barbecue because I am a Texan, okay? Ready to give masa or Vandy a try? Use code Kinsey for 25% off your first order at Masa Chips or vandycrisps.com, or simply click the link in the video description or scan that QR code to claim this offer. Don't feel like ordering online? Masa and Vandy are now available nationwide at your local Sprouts supermarket. Stop by and pick up a couple of bags before they're gone. Rafe, a massive security breach. People that might not follow the royal family definitely know this story because it's kind of delicately featured in The Crown. Um, we know that a man named Michael Fagan climbed a palace drain pipe like Spider-Man, wandered the corridors for minutes, and he ends up sitting on Queen Elizabeth's bed while she's sleeping. She handles this like a pro. Talk me through this wild ride.
So this is, I would say, the most secure, the most serious security threat of the 20th century in terms of the British royal family, and quite remarkable today. Happened in 1982. Didn't quite have the same level. Obviously, didn't have the technology we have today with digital security networks and so forth. But in 1982, Michael Fagan twice entered Buckingham Palace. The first occasion was in June 1982 when he got over the perimeter wall, climbed the drain pipe, got into the palace, and just roamed around for half an hour. Security alarms
So
were
that's
triggered.
just the first time.
That's the first time. He was there for half an hour, completely undetected, and left. He was there for half an hour. He triggered security alarms, and the staff at Buckingham Palace just thought it was a faulty issue, and they didn't investigate.
I thought it was a
And
corgi. A corgi
during
just
the,
roaming
well,
around.
the corgis are involved because during this half an hour, he drank half a bottle of Californian wine. He sat on a throne for a bit, and then he needed to find a bathroom and he couldn't find one, so he relieved himself in a bin full of the corgis' food. He then left. He returned a month later, and this was the serious issue here. He got into the state apartments, and after wandering around for a while, he went into the Queen's bedroom. And when he arrived in the Queen's bedroom, he was barefoot and he had smashed a glass ashtray and he was holding a shard of this glass in his hand. And he arrived in the Queen's bedroom and sat on her bed. Her Majesty woke up and once again demonstrated that brilliant sang-froid and stiff upper lip we expect of the British aristocracy and royal family. Now, remarkably, she pressed her emergency alarm button twice, and nobody heard it because the night policeman had just finished his shift and the footman was away walking the corgis. Can you
Oh,
imagine such a situation to happen to the head of state?
no.
And so she kept him talking, and she managed to catch the eye of a maid who happened to, because he didn't close the door behind him. The maid saw what was going on, and the maid and the Queen managed to talk him into the pantry to get some food or drink. And he fell for this, and then a footman was alerted, and the footman kept him busy with a glass of whiskey whilst the police were summoned and arrived there. But an unimaginable situation for the head of state to be placed in, and it really caused obviously huge embarrassment all around. And the Scotland Yard and the security detail there had massive changes after that point to ensure that something so ridiculous couldn't happen again.
So did he admit to the first time he roamed around? Is that how they discovered that?
Yeah, later on. And so remarkably, at that time, entering into a royal palace, trespassing into a royal palace was not a criminal offense. So they couldn't charge him criminally. They had to charge him with a civil offense for the theft of this half bottle of Canadian wine, of Californian wine. And anyway, in the end, all the charges were dropped because he was deemed to be, a psychiatric case rather than a
Mm.
criminal case. and so he went into a mental home and spent months there. But then he was released only a few months later, and he was in prison later for assault, conspiring to supply, I think it was heroin in the 1990s. And he even ended up recording a version of the Sex Pistols' "God Save the Queen," so he became a minor celebrity, if you can imagine.
Oh, I can in today's day and age, if we're being honest. Meghan Markle has a Christmas special, so yes. Um, I want to ask you, we're talking a lot about mental health issues, and it's Ian Ball that I think recently, let's talk about one of the scariest scenarios with poor Princess Anne. It's such a tough cookie. But hasn't Ian Ball been in a mental institution, and isn't he now claiming his innocence when it comes to this 1974 issue? Um, Wild, a gunman, Ian Ball, blocks Princess Anne's car on the mall and attempts to abduct her for ransom. She repeatedly refused to get out of the car, telling him not bloody likely. He shot several people in the process. Uh, is, is is it true that he's now saying that he's innocent? He should be released. And is this another case of mental illness?
Yes, well, he was a schizophrenic. So he essentially he drove his car, a white Escort, and it blocked the royal limousine carrying Princess Anne and her then husband, Captain Mark Phillips. And in those days, again, remarkably, there was only one royal protection officer with the princess. Now, I happen to my club is quite close to St James's Palace. Well, literally, it's about a 2 minute walk. So I quite often see members of the royal family. I saw Princess Anne just well, a few days ago, actually. And of course, she always has another car with her, right? So there's always a royal police car with them now. None of that sort of situation existed back in the 1970s. And this chap's, fired. He injured the chauffeur. He injured the police protection officer. It was thanks to a passing, you couldn't make this up. This is stuff of in films. A passing heavyweight boxing champion was walking past and basically punched him and attacked this guy with the gun. And
Wow.
then the St. James's Palace police arrived and they were able to arrest and detain the guy. And as you say, again, this showed the Princess Anne's resolute spirit there. She said, at the beginning, I was extremely polite, and it was only when he started tugging at me and he tore my dress that I lost my temper with him, which was quite an interesting reflection on her. It turned out that he was planning to kidnap her and hold the princess for a £3 million ransom, which was equivalent to about, I think it's £26 million today, but that he wanted to give all that money to our National Health Service to look after psychiatric patients.
Wow.
That's what he claimed, at least. And so he was sectioned and put into a psychiatric prison, and he's been there. He's been there ever since.
I do think we had this discussion as well when I saw you last time. We were talking just about how impressive King Charles is during an Australia Day ceremony in Sydney. This is in 1994. A man fired two shots from a starting pistol towards Prince Charles, now King Charles, as he was about to give a speech. Charles remained composed while security wrestled the shooter to the ground. It was not live ammunition, but they realized that perhaps they should step up their game when it came to protecting the future king.
Yes, I remember this one very well. I was in my teens in 1994, and this was a chap called David Kang. As you said, there was no real risk to the king because these were blank shots fired from a starting pistol. But no one knew that at the time. And at the time, they genuinely thought this was an assassination attempt. He had leapt over a fence, jumped onto the platform, and fired these two very loud shots. And if you look at the footage from the time, Prince Charles just turns and adjusts his cufflinks. It was a remarkable moment, a sort of a James Bond moment. You could think that's how he might have reacted. And remarkably, the New South Wales Premier and another celebrity were on stage. They tackled the gunman
Wow.
themselves. They tackled the gunman themselves. Turned out this was a political protest. It wasn't an assassination, as I said, an assassination attempt. This was a 23-year-old university student who wanted to protest the way that the Australian government was treating Cambodian asylum seekers by holding them in detention camps, and he had written to many people in the Australian government and elsewhere, various world leaders about this. So it was a very different sort of situation to the other ones we've been talking about, which have been mental health issues. He was sentenced to 500 hours of community violence, and he's since qualified to be a barrister, which is a form of lawyer in Britain and Australia.
Wow, that's the update that shocks me the most. And I did tell you before we started this conversation, it's not my intention to say that Harry is under similar threats. I just wanted to spotlight some of the real security scares that the royal family has experienced. You know, I don't know. I'm not very I don't side with Harry in this particular instance because I think you quit your job. You were told these would be the consequences of you quitting your job, and now you have to find your own solution. And I really resented his BBC interview, and I will be very cynical if his threat level changes and he gets what he wants. I will be very cynical and suspect that it's a result of him bullying his cancer-stricken father, if I'm being honest with you.
Yeah, and I'd have to agree with much, as you say, much of that is quite blatantly obvious to anyone with any common sense. Of course, it does bring with it as well, but it puts the king, as you say, who's still not in great health at all, into an invidious position as well, because he doesn't want his son to come to any harm. And if something does happen, and of course his son didn't get any police protection, that also has huge potentials there for being a terrible incident with huge repercussions for the government and for the monarchy as a whole. But yes, he has made his bed and chosen to lie in it. And there are certainly, I would say, much greater security risks in America than there are in the UK. And not all members of the royal family get such great police protection at all times. They're able to go about their lives. The point I often make, for example, with regards to this claim that he can't come over with his children or his wife to the UK because of the security threat is you don't need to tell people you're coming over. Queen Elizabeth II used to love to go to Kentucky to see horse breeders out there with whom she was great friends. Prince Philip was always going off to Canada as well. People were never aware of these visits because they were entirely private visits that took place, and nobody was any the wiser. So there is no reason that Harry and Meghan and the children couldn't come to see the king, say at Balmoral, away in the Scottish Highlands, or at Birk Hall, or at Sandringham even, and nobody in the world would even know about it until after the fact.
Right, right. Well, I completely agree with you, Rafe Heydel-Mankoo. Thank you so much for talking to me. I hope you'll come back because I do enjoy our chats. Agree with us, disagree with us, let us know in the comments below. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share this video with a friend. Rafe, where can people keep up with you? Is it Twitter? Is it X? Where would you prefer people keep up with your stuff?
Yes, RAFHM is my easy Twitter handle, and just Google my name in YouTube to subscribe to my channel where I post many of my debates and talks about monarchy and other subjects.
Oh, I can't wait to see you again so soon. Happy holidays to you.
And to you, all the best. Happy Christmas.